Hello, everybody. I'm on my knees because it's easier to read because this poem is freaking long. It's probably the longest poem I've ever written. So if you only listen to some of it, that's fine. It's basically about my time in Costa Rica, except for it also kind of ended up being about American displacement and our generation and all those sort of messages. Just gonna. Cool. Okay. So far it's just called Costa Rica. We sang ourselves home in the dusky glazed hills, an angel on one shoulder holding hands with fairy tales. We told ourselves we were growing up. First impressions are often risky. No one ever likes the person you think you wish you were. A group of shuffling strangers at an airport terminal, playing word games and guessing from the spaces around us the faces we'd be pleased by, the faces we'd learn to avoid. Not to mention the standard teenage evaluation of potential whisked glances and stolen moments alone. I thought I would not be able to keep the lid on my words, and the dust of the linoleum floor would skid me to your feet, vomiting poetry, addressing myself by too many names. I have a talent for bad first impressions. But luck went my way that day, or maybe I just worked really hard to shut up for once. The plane took off with me, vomitless and unsatisfied. We felt shivers in our young American bodies and wondered. We skinned our knees landing in San Jose. There is a certain powerful pleasure in imagining the worst. Well, we were all callous tadpoles. We found humor in 20, 30-something-year-old mothers using their bodies as grocery store coupons and college funds. Nothing bad enough could happen to us that we would not overcome with our loud generation brand of gallows humor. Impervious to everything except our own fickle emotionality, our cruel joys, the moral codes we made up as we went. These were perhaps the most honest times of our lives. Quick to judge and prepared to be pardoned, we sat in a circle and begged each other to forgive us our trespasses. We told ourselves we were growing up. Rumbling up into the skyline, I displayed my colors to a bus full of strangers, and no one died. 2 days later, we had too much time trapped under tacky tarp, antagonizing each other since we couldn't the impartial Costa Rican gods of torrential 3 o'clock downpours. If they were rageful, if it were punishment, we would be in more familiar territory, young, foolish Americans bucking under our saddles. Don't treat us like children, we exclaimed, irritated by such easy inertia. What are we supposed to do with our young American bodies but use them the worst we know how? Boredom generates more opinions than anyone expects. Scattered like peanut shells on the laps of our circle, we looked at each other and thought, oh God, we are all extroverted introverts. We all have 50 things to say and no words to express them. In the midst of torrential 3 o'clock downpour and jungle heat, we, the loud generation, forgot how to speak. This was the true catalyst. We, the loud generation, ran to find our scattered words, our peanut shells. We told ourselves this was growing up. The damp burr of a foreign tongue became a lighter load in some of our mouths. Others became eloquent in the dialect of dance, the jargon of good-natured jeers and juggling a ball between continents, the universal language of la-la-las. To be honest, we found a lot of our words lurking in each other's mouths the way people our age usually do. To be honest, we were clumsy in our young American bodies. In our loud generation's silence, even then, we said a lot. We resorted to pulling pigtails and sticking out our tongues, behavior we had told ourselves we were above because some of us had made important decisions and others had smoked bongs, but honestly, we were just children. We still are. To be honest, I have a talent for being honest when I shouldn't. So honestly, we were train wrecks. Robbed of our words and rankled by rank, we concentrated our ire into little balls in our chests and let it poison our words. We united under common enemies, we fractured and reformed like the time that held us captive a month to reduce us to jungle children, a month to be so loyal so quickly. And honestly, it was easy to tell ourselves we were growing up just because we forgot what it was like to take a crap and not clog the toilet. But we were not growing up because of that. We were growing up because we were simply surrounded by beauty. What else would you call the rhythmic flashes of white fabric to damp burr yodels, the tightened ache in our calves from trekking home, the dust under our wordless tongues in the golden morning, the matted fur of a metiche among men, the sing-song of small children humbled by humility and so convinced of their own importance we felt instant kinship? What else would you call the nut-brown strength of wrinkled hands below sweet smiles, the tangible orange of fresh mango retreating to leave baleen in our teeth, the grief of a town mourning and missing its matriarch, the screamed joy of a child bundled across your back and tossed about, the burn of fresh scrapes across old wounds, how it felt to be unskilled labor, the dragging and the heaving, and the reason we were here? How else can you describe how insignificant we felt? Or maybe I used the word we too liberally. Like most things, maybe it was all in my head. And that was it in the end. There was too much in my head. I had almost forgotten Maria, almost forgotten the words that wrangled my wrists. Without them, with all you, with a month in damp jungle heat, I was lost. By the last week, I buried my bones in books and hissed when people came too close. I sunk my roots into linguistical pursuits and refined reeds and refused to budge. A month. We groaned and growled, but in our ungraceful grumbles was the panic that came with easy inertia. Time still held our young American bodies captive. A month to reduce us to jungle children. A month. But then a month became one more week, and one more week became goodbye. The last night we decided no language was expressive enough for the words we would never be able to explain. We exploded. We threw away the pact we made in San Jose because what was the use? What were our young American bodies good for but giving in to our desires? Why else would we be here? Why else would things end if it were not our job to end them? Why, we cried when asked. Why? This is our job. We are the loud generation. Even when we forgot how to speak, it is our job to say something, to tell ourselves this is growing up, and then maybe it might. A 3 a.m. wake-up call, and suddenly goodbye was the end. Perplexed by our puzzlement, burdened by our bags, the burned remains of our expectations, we fractured as quickly as we had before, expecting to reform again, but we didn't. And the thing about a month is that it's not enough time to make you regret it. Some of us clutched at each other like we wished we'd forgotten how to let go. Honestly, some of us didn't. But we separated with Facebook names and memories of word games, of spinning under stars and getting dizzy from the disastrous sort of danger that comes from having a young American body, of whirling and kicking and complaining and chalking up our problems to the Costa Rican gods of torrential 3 o'clock downpour and the rotating cycles of extroverted introversion. We parted under the pact of the loud generation, and we all said something worth listening to, after all. We told ourselves we were growing up. If you listen to all of that, you're a saint. So, bye-bye.